Welcome to Business Unveiled Podcast. This is the place where we help overwhelmed, time-starved entrepreneurs like you make the profitable shifts to get more done and get more out of life. I'm your host, Angela Profit, award-winning 8-figure entrepreneur and CEO. And in every episode of Business Unveiled, I'm bringing you conversations that will give you the expertise and strategies that will scale your team and business so you can get shit done. That's GSD in our world. So get your time back and grow a business that helps you be present in your life. Let's do this, y'all. Today's podcast is being brought to you by one of my very, very favorite platforms called Kajabi. If you're looking for a platform to host a website, to capture leads, to convert leads, to do a simple sales funnel or a lead page, Kajabi houses all of that stuff under one roof. One of the things that you will love, it removes all barriers of using technology. It can help you soar your business online and scale your business. It is absolutely the easiest platform I've ever built on the back end. And for the user experience, it is amazing. And it is so easy to use. For an exclusive rate and to get a free trial, go to my link, angelaprofit.com/Kajabi, Kajabi. Hi, y'all. It's Angela. I'm back for another episode of Business Unveiled. And today you're in for a big treat because right now what we're going to talk about, what we're going to share is super, super relevant, and it's just shit that needs to be talked about. So I know that you're going to get a ton of value today. And so I'm talking to Isaiah Goodman. He is the CEO and founder of, are you ready for this? MoneyVerbs, which I think kind of sounds like a fun rap song. I don't know. We'll see. And Becoming Financial. Now, don't tune me out. Don't, you're not going to get bored. I promise. Like, I feel like so many people that listen, they're afraid to talk about the financials of business, the money behind business, like what becoming financial really, really means. And then like, it's all about like how to be intentional. And that's what Isaiah is going to talk to us about today. So if you're driving, you can always go back and take notes. But if you're at a safe place, like pull out your phones and get a note open and let's take some notes and really get some big things out of today, because this is one of the most important things as an entrepreneur and a creative and a business owner that you've got to focus on. So Isaiah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yay! So before we dive in, because I got a lot of questions for you, can you just take us back to your journey of how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? Like what has gotten you to your path of like what you're doing and the message that you're sharing like today?
Yeah, so I have a really unique background. I actually, I'm half black, half white. And my great grandparents were some of the first settlers here in Minnesota. So kind of a unique history. Grew up here mostly in the Twin Cities. I went to college out in a school called Washington and Lee University. So they're in the news a little bit around Robert E. Lee lately. And yeah, it's really interesting. They might end up changing their name. But graduated in business, started my professional career working at Target, and learned so much about business and financial management. I actually managed $150 million per year frozen meal business. So it might not be the sexiest. You know, we were talking about lean cuisines and smart ones and healthy choice, but they did over $3 million of sales per week across the country.
What?
Yes.
Oh, okay. But I'm that girl that like used to buy that stuff all the time because it's easy and it seems healthy, but by the way, is it really healthy?
It's really not. There's so much sodium.
Oh my God.
we did a challenge. We tried to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner with frozen meals, and nobody could make it more than like 3 or 4 days.
What happens to you? Like,
Just too many preservatives and sodium and stuff. But I'm not bashing those guys. It works for some people. I
uh-huh,
think, and this was back in 2009. So maybe now they're a little bit healthier, more health conscious. But
uh-huh.
it was fun. We did a ton of sales. I learned a ton about business, and actually started my financial planning career at Northwestern Mutual. So
Okay.
I was there for about 5 years, really enjoyed it. And about 4 years ago, I started my own financial planning firm called Becoming Financial.
I love it. So what is MoneyVerbs? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so MoneyVerbs is a result of all my years of experience. So I've been doing financial planning about 9 years. And over and over and over, I kept hearing from people, I don't know what to do with money. What do I do with my money? And I was like, they need action steps. They need things, verbs. And I was like, money verbs. They need to know what to do. So we're creating an app, and if you guys want to check it out, it's on Android and iOS, and we're
Ooh.
creating a place for you to kind of practice and get a new experience with money.
So that's really cool. Like my investments have been with Northwestern, probably like 20 years or something. And their approach to things is very interesting in terms of how they, I guess, like teach the financial advisors to teach other people about money, which I've learned a lot. Like was in an EO forum with a guy who has been with Northwestern for probably 30 years, and he has helped a lot of people, but where he was at in his life stage or his life cycle was he like brought on a bunch of other, I guess, junior partners is what you would call them.
Sure. Yeah,
And he
totally.
yeah, and then like he just wanted to create content, and so I helped him create like all this great content and like telling stories of how he has helped people, like with their kids' college funds, and if a parent dies or a grandparent dies or a spouse dies, like all these things. But then Northwestern like was very like you can't just put these stories out and I don't know. So it was
Bingo. That's exactly why
exactly.
I left.
That's so this is where I'm
100%.
going.
Yeah,
I was about to ask you.
oh my gosh, I love the company. We still have some products there for my wife and kids and stuff. And they've been around longer than some states have been states in America, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But
Yeah.
like you said, there's some compliance stuff, and the biggest thing that I found is, they do it for good reason, because they've got thousands and thousands of agents all over the country. And if they let one person do it, now they got to monitor everybody.
Yep.
And
That's
so rather than do that, they're like, hey, you know what? We're just going to say no to everybody. And so I became an RIA, became my own company. And so, I do the compliance, and we still have to be really smart and careful about what we say. But then I even went a step further to create a whole separate entity called MoneyVerbs to focus on the financial training. So Becoming Financial is registered advice, and MoneyVerbs is training, education, a place where you can kind of goof around and practice.
yeah, it really blew my mind because then I mean I got like really involved and in depth with because like he's a friend of mine and like all of his stories were awesome and I know that that's a way to connect with people. I mean just through like podcasting and telling stories people get it. But like their approach on marketing and sales, I'm just like, what? Like, no. Like, and the older I get, the younger people get who start to, get into making money.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like, if it's new money and their parents don't like teach them, which is like par for the course right now, they just blow it. And it makes me so sad for them and their future. And so, but is this something that you were seeing like with young business owners that start to really make money? Like, do you see them blow it because they don't have someone to guide them and give them strategy and focus?
Yeah, it's totally all about perspective, because when you're young, you've got this time horizon that is longer than probably you've been alive, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
in your early 20s, And you're like, well, gosh, I'm going to live till I'm 80. So I got plenty of time. And you already know where I'm going,
Right.
right? All of a sudden you're 42 and you're like, shoot,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have as much time anymore. And that's where it gets really tough because, this idea of starting and saving and stuff like that, nobody ever teaches us. We got to kind of learn on our own. So I like to say we're kind of tossed in the deep end of the pool and we got to figure out how to swim.
Yeah, and there's no life jacket, and there's no like ear claw, like those things that like
Earplugs,
keep the
yeah.
water out of your ears. Like
or
there
your
is no,
nose, yeah.
yeah, like there is no playbook. And so, but also what I'm finding with that company is that they're very conservative. There's nothing wrong with that. But my financial advisor definitely doesn't talk to my accountant or anything unless like I initiate that. And so in your business, are you trying to teach people like the whole approach, or do you just focus on that one financial piece and then you collaborate with like the other financial planners?
Yeah, so we
Or do you
definitely
think that
do.
people need like all these different people to help them with their finances?
Well, it's interesting with becoming financial. What we found is there's a group of people that want to get financially savvy, sort of financially fit, but they feel like they can't access a traditional financial advisor. And so,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of advisors around the country, they say you got to have 250,000 of assets for us to manage your investments. And so if you come
Mm-hmm.
with 100,000, it's not enough. And some advisors charge a fee that's up to 3,000 to 5,000 per year, and not a lot of Americans can afford that. And some advisors that are insurance focused, they love to work with you if you buy an insurance product. So with our platform, we were like, hey, we're going to charge less. We only charge 1,500 per year, and hopefully we can build a relationship to where people do investments and do insurance with us once they feel comfortable. And so that's why the name of the company is called Becoming, because we're trying to find people that are on their way, that are getting there. And so, yeah, it's been a fun journey. We've helped so many people here out of the last 4 years really develop and grow and reach their stride financially. But then with that experience, I saw there's still millions and millions of people that personally I'll just never be able to reach unless we use technology. So that's where
Mm-hmm.
MoneyVerbs comes in to, expand our reach, expand our influence. The cost is only going to be about $70 per year. And so, we're going to be able to access and help so many more people get their feet under them when it comes to financial planning and stuff.
So will this app, is it like a pathway for people to use this app so that, and will it be like inclusive of all the things? Meaning, so like what I'm really asking is like stock market stuff. Like, do you need a stockbroker, or do you let your financial advising company like oversee that and like put your money in stocks?
So that's the beauty of it is for MoneyVerbs, we really want to provide people with the education. So really just providing this space where I feel safe to learn and talk about things. A little bit of a crude example, but I think our creative business owners will appreciate this if they're creatives out there. Um,
Yeah.
think about sex ed, right? Nobody wants to
Yep.
go to class, but
Right.
we want to be proficient. We want to be good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you want to have safe, comfortable experiences to where you can get better, right? And that's missing for money. Financial literacy is so boring and awful and terrible, but there's no safe space to practice. It's always live ammunition when it comes to money. And so we want to provide this space that, whether you have a disability, whether you feel like you don't have very much money, you come from a certain background, you look like a certain skin color, or even you speak a different language, we want to provide a place where you can start to tiptoe into this game of money, this game of life.
Yeah. Like I'm y'all. So you got to go look at his website, which we'll put all this in the show notes. So I'm like looking at your website, and you have these cute little icons that like creatives just, I go straight to the pictures because that's what I understand.
Yes.
And underneath it, it's like plan, earn, prepare, save, spend, and reflect. And so is that a formula, a pathway like that you all help clients understand?
Yeah, it really, in my experience, it's been this way to help people take these steps that they feel comfortable with. So for me, it's always starts with plan. And believe it or not, every single client that I work with personally, we start with a vision board. And it's weird.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of people are like, why does a financial planner do a vision board? Well, think
I
about
love it.
what's on most people's vision boards: a family, a house, a car, a business, all the things that take money. And so once we start to understand why are we doing this, what's it for, then we go to things like building out a budget, working on our credit, paying off debt, and then moving towards more of the advanced stuff around insurance, investments, retirement planning, and estate planning.
So I love the way that you very delicately say things. You say unintentional ignorance instead of like just calling people stupid. But and
You
like
just didn't know. Yeah.
right. And I'm always like, you don't know what you don't know. But like every once in a while though, there are some people, they have an iPhone and they're like, so where's the home? But what's the home button? And I'm like, you don't have the version of the iPhone that has the home button. Like you have a new iPhone.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, are you effing stupid? But like, I don't ever think that way because, in teaching people productivity and technology with their Apple products, it's like they feel like they're so stupid. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Like no one has ever taught, unless you go block time and sit at the Apple store and take every free class, which yes, I did
Yeah.
that. And I still do
Right.
that. I'm a nerd. You're not going to know these things, people. And
Right.
so it is an intentional ignorance, but from a financial planner's perspective, what does that mean to you and how do you help?
Well, here's the deal. Most people they've heard kind of somewhere in their lifetime, people talk about things like stocks, bonds, the stock market. But here's a great example, and I'll give you guys a little bit of time on the podcast just to reflect on your own. When you hear the term S&P 500, what does that make you think of? Now, for a lot of people, they kind of see it on like CNBC or their local news, and they're like, "Oh, that's the stock market, right?" Well, the S&P 500 is only 500 companies. It's basically the 500 biggest companies. The entire stock market is only made up of about 3,700 companies. And so there's just stuff that we think that it's thousands and thousands of companies and it's every company in America, but it's really only a handful of companies that have AKA gone public, and you can trade their shares. So there's just stuff that we don't learn that it's not our fault. We just don't know. And so we're very nervous to take the leap, right? If there's a pool and you don't know how deep it is, you don't want to jump in.
Mm-hmm. You might break your neck or lose your trunks or
Right,
yeah,
right. Or
lose your shit.
it keeps going down deeper than you thought, and you're like, oh no, I'm too deep.
Yeah. Yeah. What are your thoughts on, so do you like playing in the stock market?
So it depends on what the goal is. So I'll give you guys a good example of just really how I got very, very lucky with the last recession. So in 2008, I was a part of a good group of friends at Washington and Lee. We started an investment club. And in 2007, it was going really, really good. And then, of course, 2008 happened and we were like, shoot, this wasn't so great.
Uh-huh.
I was lucky. I was working part-time while doing school. I had a little bit of extra money and I invested. So the market was down. I saw it rise back up, and gosh, it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, because then I graduated. I moved back home with mom and dad for a few months, and I bought my first house at 22 because I had a down payment. Yeah, so I was really, really fortunate that I was intrigued and I started to learn about this stuff. and I had the timing and the capability to make it happen. But for me, that was a very short-term specific focus. I'm going to put in a couple $1,000. It almost tripled. I used some of that money to, for my down payment, and now it's gone. But if you're thinking about, hey, I want to do, some savings for retirement and stuff like that, I wouldn't call it playing around. I want to be thoughtful around learning
Right. I'm a
So
creative, so I use reckless words.
there we go. Yeah. So, it depends on your goals. If the longer term the goal, the, more careful I want to be. But if it's a short term thing and, for example, Tesla is a stock, with the car company, their stock price is going up a lot right now because they're supposed to split here in a week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what that means is if their stock price, I'm just using made up numbers here just for easy math, but if their stock price is $400, they're going to split it 4-1 and it'll be worth $100 and you'll have 4 times as many shares. What people are thinking, well, gosh, I can make some money because if it goes back up over 100, next week, then I'll have more money. And so, I think if you have a little bit of money to quote unquote play with, then those are kind of the short-term things. If you're okay losing some, that's when you play, you goof around a little bit.
So do you have Apple stock? It's about to split.
Yes, that was another good example, but I'm not giving any advice.
So
insert,
I mean, I'm very thankful. Like my dad, really my parents, I don't know where they learned all this shit, and they're such the old generation of have 20 accounts in 20 different places and all this money spread out and all these different funds. And I'm like, this just seems like a big ass headache to me.
Right.
But then my dad taught my brother, and then my brother is very, he's not a financial advisor. He owns a PI company and they spy on people and stuff. It's really funny. But for fun, he deals in stocks all the time. And so he's always helping me. He's like, oh, you got to get this, you got to get more of this, you got to do this. And I'm like, well, I'm thankful, somebody's over here telling me what to do, kinda, because I don't he looks at it every single day on his app. I think I get a statement, maybe monthly, maybe quarterly. I don't look at it. I just give it to him because it's how I see it is, like you said, if you take something out and you put a down payment on a home, that's an investment, that's equity. But my dad was like, oh no, you leave that there until, till retirement, till you're 65 or you're 70 or whatever. But what are your thoughts? As a financial advisor, if the stocks are doing well and you take money out, to do things with it, what are your thoughts on that? Is that bad? Should you not do that?
It depends on what bucket it's in. So especially for our creatives out there, depending on your incorporation, what I would recommend, and again, this isn't specific advice to anybody, but just kind of general information. If you say you make a pretty good income, close to 6 figures or something, but you don't need to live on all of it, you can set up what's called a solo 401k. And in that, you can put up to $50,000 a year away pre-tax. So it can significantly reduce your tax burden and then actually jumpstart your retirement for long term. The downside is that money, if you take it out, you're going to pay income tax plus 10% penalty. And so I wouldn't recommend any sort of retirement account like an IRA or 401k or anything like that if you think you're going to touch it. Now, if you're like, I want to be able to go on a trip every once in a while, or help my kids or do something, maybe I'll need some new equipment or a new space for my studio, then I would recommend what's called a non-qualified brokerage account, or just an individual account. So this is something you can set up with a Robinhood or an Acorns or E-Trade, or your financial advisor, because then if you invest and the stock market goes up, anything you take out, you only have to pay capital gains tax. So if it went from 1,000 to 2,000, you only pay taxes on 1,000 of gain. And if it's more than a year, it's only about 15% tax. So it's not a huge burden or penalty for you to access, the money that's gone up.
So for those of you listening and your head is spinning and you don't know what any of this means, it's okay, because that was me years ago. But you don't really know about, like, I didn't really take all this seriously because I am like very entrepreneur-itis, like go with the flow, like woohoo, whatever God brings me and falls in my lap. And you really shouldn't do that. So especially like when a pandemic comes up and you need to understand like, oh shit, how am I going to live?
Right.
So I'm glad that I took interest. I never took interest until I had to start really paying a lot of taxes. And what I mean by a lot, which my very first like bill in a quarter, I'll never forget. I had to write a check for $28,000. And I was like, oh my God, this
What
is
is
so
going
much
on?
money. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I worked so hard and I have to pay this to the government because I didn't understand. And so, then I got an accountant and they started to like teach me, like, okay, like I don't mind paying taxes, like whatever, I get it. But there's creative financial ways that can help you offset. So don't wait until, like I did, until you have to write like this really painful check that hurts really bad, where you just feel like you're giving your money away. And I didn't understand like where it was going. And then my brother's like, do you want to invest in some stocks? Like, do you want to? I'm like, I guess so, but I don't ever want to write another check for $28,000. But the more revenue you bring in, the more taxes you're going to have to pay. And you just having an advisor, like someone like yourself and what you guys do, is essential to like building wealth. Like, well, that's what I've learned like over time. And so I know I love the educational perspective, but like from the, if someone is completely unaware, like myself a long time ago, what's the first thing that they can do to like become aware? Like, would it be like, listen to this podcast, listen to a financial podcast, read this book, download our app? Like, what's the first thing that you tell people to start to become aware of these things that they need to be thinking about?
So I like to liken money as a skill, just like an instrument or a sport. So let's say you're going to try to learn a new instrument. Well, the first thing you got to do is kind of learn about some of the differences of what they do. Do I want to play a flute or a clarinet or a saxophone or the drums? Which one would I be interested in? And I think depending on where you're at in your life, starting with where you think you'd be interested. So a 20-something-year-old probably doesn't care about setting up a will or a power of attorney or anything, a
Right.
trust, that sort of thing, right? And that's where I think a lot of financial literacy really messes up, is they're like, here's everything you need to know about everything with money. And you're like, I don't care about a will right now. But a budget, oh my gosh, I need a budget today. I need a budget yesterday. So starting with some of the basics according to where you're at. And, a lot of times people are like, I've done the best I can. I got a couple kids. I'm just trying to make it work. But man, I really need help with these taxes. Taxes are kicking my butt every year. So let's start there and start to become aware of some of the things like, hey, did you know an HSA, health savings account, you can put money away pre-tax. It grows tax-free. And as long as you use it for healthcare, it's tax-free. So if you got a bunch of doctor bills and stuff for your kids, have a HSA set up through your employer. Now you can pay some of those medical bills a little bit more tax efficiently. So just some of those things that whatever's most particular for your situation, start to learn a little bit about that area first, and then get broader and broader and broader.
So what I hear you saying is like, you meet people where they are, kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah, that has to be where you start. And if somebody gives you a one size fits all, kind of like Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey sort of,
Yeah.
they're not actually licensed professionals, believe it or not. Susie Orman,
Crazy.
yeah, she used to be, and she let her licensing lapse because now they can go out and market and advertise however they want. Mm-hmm. So the opposite of, your experience with Northwestern Mutual. Mm-hmm. So when they give a one size fits all, everybody should do this. that's when I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is not going to work for everybody. It'll work for a lot of people, but you'll see some frustrations if it doesn't work for you. And
Yep.
so, if you're like, gosh, you know what, the biggest thing right now is, I don't know, maybe I've got kids and I just saw some friends die from COVID. Let me get a fucking will. Like,
Yes. Yes.
sorry for the, but
No, let's
but
get real. We are
go
real
get a
here.
will. Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you got to be real about what's going on in the world today. Go get your will if you've got kids or business or somebody depending on you. Like, it's too easy because it's such a headache. A great example is out here in Minnesota. Prince died a few years ago, I think like 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
They're still working on his estate because
What?
he didn't have a will. And when you have $100 million
Really?
estate, yeah, all of a sudden all these people are like, yeah, in 1984, he told me he was going to give me $1 million. And so
What?
you've got all these people coming out of the woodworks. The state has to get involved. And so, something as simple as a will that might cost a couple $100, get some of that stuff done if it makes sense for you. Kids, married, family, that sort of thing. But if you're 22 and single, start with the budget, start with figuring out your student loans.
So it's like, and the other thing too that I would say after you get a will is, like I put it on my calendar every year. It's like the first week of January. Like I've learned as a business owner over the years, like there's some shit I need to take care of. And so like I update my will. When my father died, I'm like, Mom, don't you think you need to update your will? And then like my brother started having kids. My sister had more kids. I'm like, you have a fund for the first 2 grandkids, but what about the other 4 that have like populated since all this?
You got
And
to update some
so,
stuff.
and
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like you really want, and not only like the first of every year, but also it's like every decade. Cause like you're saying, in your 20s, you need a budget. In your 30s, like, I don't know what you need. I mean, maybe you have some money and you should get into the stock market. Like, and then when you're in your 40s, you probably need something else. And then in your 50s and your 60s, is there like a good, like decade just check that it's like, okay, these are the things like in your experience, how, like your clients and people and like where they're at. Like, do you see, okay, like you said, budget in your 20s, in your 30s, make sure you're doing this, in your 40s, do this, in your 50s, do that. Like, does it work like that at all?
Totally. I would put it kind of in the example that you gave about our website. So plan is in your 20s. You're thinking about what's my vision board? How am I going to get my budget together? How am I going to get my credit right? Earn, you're making sure you're paying your bills on time. You're starting to really think about how do I save and put money aside. And that's getting in your late 20s, maybe early 30s. You get a couple promotions. Prepare into your 30s, maybe you're having kids, you get your house. So now you're thinking about insurance, you're protecting things, right? Health coverage, all of that stuff, disability insurance. And then as you start to get into your 30s and 40s, now you start to be able to spend a little bit. Hey, I've done my planning, I've done my earning, I've prepared, I can spend a little bit, but very thoughtfully and intentionally. And, as we get into 40s, 50s, we're starting to think about, hey, how can I, get ready to start to reflect? And is this the lifestyle that I wanted? Is this the goal of what I've, been intentional of for my life? And then hopefully as you get towards retirement in 60s and 70s, you can try to help other people do the same, help your family.
Do you find that, and I love that you do the whole vision board thing, because for creatives, like that's like the perfect word to get people in. They're like, oh yeah, vision boards. Like we,
Yeah.
but typically what, like as creatives, at least this is how it was, the first 2 years, it's like I was doing vision boards for other people's events and other people's weddings and like other people's trips and vacations and retreats and business retreats and growth. And I never really, no one ever challenged me until about 10 years in, where I had a new coach and he's like, what's your vision? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, why are you doing all of this? Like in the next 5 years and 10 years, like, where do you want to be? And I'm like, no one's ever asked me that. I don't know. Like,
Right.
why are you doing all of this? And he was kind of like aggressive about it, which I had a very aggressive father. So, that worked with me, like that tone of language.
Sure.
And I'm like, I don't know. I just enjoy doing it and I'm just working and there's money in the bank. And he's like, no, 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 no. And so he really like took me under his wing and like taught me about like, what does a vision mean? And so he's like, take a few days and think about it. And I'm like, okay. So then I come back a few days later and he's like, if you had all the money in the world and you never had to work again, like, what would you go do? I'm like, well, because at that time I was working with so many disgruntled people that were getting married and like they really weren't in love. It was more just like a show because they were in their 30s and they felt like they were in a hurry, like it was a game or something. And like that's not fun. Like it's not fun to go spend people's money when they're like truly not soulmates. Like you can just kind of tell sometimes.
Right.
And so I'm like, I mean, what I said to him, I'm like, I want to buy a private island because I just done like my first private island wedding, which I didn't even know that that freaking existed. And I'm like, and it's going to be the happiest island in the world, in the Guinness Book World of Records. And everyone can come there to renew their vows or honeymoon. And everyone that works there has to go through a psychological like a psychology methodology testing to make sure that everybody's like put in their happy place. And he's like, you are so fucking cheesy. And I'm like, you told
Amazing.
me, right? He's like, I'm like, you told me to tell you, like, what am I doing? And he's like, that's really what you want? I'm like, I just want people to freaking get along. Like this is like, I'm tired of being a therapist. Like, yeah, that's what I went to school for. But like, I got out of that and I'm sick of this. And so he's like, this is good because then we can start digging in to what are you seeking and what is your vision? And your vision is
Yes.
other people are happy and they're spending their money with you and they're happy, that makes you happy. But when people are spending a lot of money, and when I say a lot of money, I'm talking like well over $1 million for these events,
Yeah.
and they're not happy and it's just a production, and we're not selling tickets to go to TPAC here, which is like the play center here where you go to watch a play. Like this is a life and a journey together, and it's marriage is not easy. It's hard if you don't each put 100% in. And it bothered me. It really bothered me. And so like, but we really started to dig very deep. And
Right.
then that's why you're divorced. And this is why, because you didn't sign up for that. And this is why.
Oh
And I'm like,
man.
oh, this
Angela,
all makes sense.
it totally does. So I'm going to walk your listeners through a cool exercise,
Yeah,
and
tell me.
we might have to continue this on another podcast. I'm having a lot of fun today. But here's a really cool exercise, and I'll go through it quickly, but you guys can listen
Yeah.
back to it and practice it. So I like to ask every single client, what's important to you about money? And they kind of think, and a lot of times they give me like one or two word response, like pay my bills. I'm like, okay, well, what's important to you about paying your bills? And they're like, oh, I want to be responsible. Well, what's important about being responsible? And so I'll go deeper and deeper and just try to keep asking what's important about the previous answer until they're like, I don't know what's more important than my family, right? And here's what I've learned is so hard about money is that what's important to us about money, if you ask that question enough times, it kind of leads to your values. And why we're afraid to talk about money is because if we don't spend according to our values, then we feel like we're not being genuine to ourselves.
Mm.
And so who wants to talk about that?
Nobody.
Nobody. Bingo. And so that's unfortunately why I think most of, at least the US, and I could be presumptuous and say probably the world, we're not taught to talk about money because it's so close to our values. And if we're not doing it right, we're like, gosh, what does this say about me? And so that's why I always start with that vision board and those questions. What's important to you about money? What's important to you about number one? What's important about number two, number three? And then you can start to really understand, well, what's important to me about money is feeling comfortable. And if your spouse thinks something different, then there might be some issues.
Yeah, you should talk about that before you get married, people. I mean, like, I never made a checklist of like, have you talked about this? Because I didn't feel like that was my role. But looking back on sometimes I'm like, maybe I should. Okay, I don't want to interrupt your exercise. Keep going.
Oh no, that was it. That's it. It's
Oh,
pretty
gotcha.
short and
Okay.
sweet. Yeah. Yep. So the what's important to you about money, and then number one, number two, number three, until you kind of are like, I don't really know what else is deeper than that. And that's, a really good starting point to start to figure out what are your values? How does that relate to your vision board? Because like you said, maybe your vision board looks all pretty and you think about your values and you're like, yeah, none of this stuff is really that important. What's really important is, that home because I'm next to my grandparents. I'll never forget my college experience. People are like, oh, why'd you go out to Virginia? And I'm like, well, one, I got a full academic scholarship. So, that was pretty
Mm-hmm.
darn good. Two,
Yep.
I was able to play basketball. So I was a student athlete and have the opportunity to continue my basketball career was amazing. But three, and the thing I think I'll actually value the very most was that my grandparents on my dad's side, they lived about an hour and a half away. And so they got to see me play basketball. I got to go visit them every couple of weekends. And then right after I graduated in 2009 and in 2010, they both passed away. And
Oh,
for me to like have those values of family and live it out, and now I can remember and reflect and have real pictures of that time with my grandparents, that meant the world to me. And of course, I could have went and visited them a couple times if I went to some other school, but I couldn't have got home cooked meals and done my laundry every couple of weekends. So, those are the sort of
right.
things like based on your values, how do you want to live your life? And again, for me, almost all my clients, it comes back to how am I planning and spending my money?
Yeah, and no one teaches us how to do that at
It's a
all.
joke,
At
right?
all.
It's a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other thing too that I've really noticed, like as I've gotten older, is that and I don't know if you find this either, but like I didn't grow up with entrepreneur parents. I grew up with a dad who worked the same company for 30 plus years. My mom was a stay-at-home mom until my brother went to college, and then she like got a little fun part-time job with like the ladies from church. And so it's like you only know what you grew up around. And then when I went to college, my mind was open a little bit more. And then when my family had a venue for 35 years, and so like I was around that, but then people were like, oh, can you go here and do an event? Can you go here and do a wedding? Can you? And I was just like, yes, 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 I'll go anywhere, whatever. But then my whole brain was like opened up to this whole different world of wow, there's a lot more out there. And a lot of kids, like, they don't go seeking for that because they don't even know that exist. So, like, do you see that in like your younger clients?
Totally. And that goes back to kind of that unintentional ignorance of, I
Yeah.
don't even know how some of this stuff works. And so how am I going to seek out knowledge or information if I'm not even aware that that's an option? And I think that's something that's so important is to try to bring this information out there to as many people as possible. And that's why we're really trying to work hard with MoneyVerbs to say, whether you're on the bus, you're in a night shift, you're coming back, from somewhere, and you can't access a book or a financial advisor, but you can go on this app and learn a little bit about money and feel a little bit more confident. That's really it. Is trying to help people experience money differently. And whether you're young or old, if you can be a little bit better than you were yesterday at money, that's the goal.
Yes, smarter every day. So y'all, we'll put this in the show notes too, but like money verbs, it says it helps you practice everything you wish you learned about money in school because school doesn't teach that, right? From getting out of debt to being rich, we are taking you on a transformational journey to help you get rich, level up, and be secure in your financial life. That is awesome. And it's just not a learning platform, it's behavioral, which by the way, like this reminds me of like my fitness pal, like where I log my
Yes.
calories.
Yes.
And I loved it. You said it a minute ago. You said like being financially fit. And so it's like a lot of very successful people that I surround myself with that I am very fortunate because they need help with things. I need help with things, but
Yep.
those are two things that they are all about, like fitness, food, fitness, what's going in my mouth, and then being financially fit. And so it's like the two apps that I would like, which I love apps, recommend. It's like follow your fitness pal if you don't know what you're putting in your mouth and how you're killing yourself with sugar. And then if you're killing yourself because you're either working smart or harder, not smarter. So I see this going like right along, like right next to my little fitness pal app to
I
log
love
in.
it. I love it. Well, we're gonna have a freemium version. That's really important for me forever to have a free place where people can learn. Of course, there's
Yeah,
going to be some advertising and stuff,
of
but
course.
in October we're going to be launching a pre-order campaign. And
Okay.
here's something that we found really unique, and a lot of our people that we've surveyed and talked to, they love this idea because in 2020 we know people need to learn about money, right? But we're actually a public benefit corporation, and so we were like, hey, what if we do this referral campaign and we kind of share the wealth a little bit? So we're going to be
Yeah.
launching where, Angela, you can invite your friends, and everybody that signs up, you're going to get $20 back. And
Ooh.
so, yeah, exactly. To where it's like, okay, they can pre-order. We're going to charge 70 per year. So we're going to do a 2-for-1. You sign up for $70 this year, you'll get it for the next 2 years for free. And then anybody that signs up with your referral code, you'll get $20 back. And, we don't want it to be multi-level marketing and that sort of thing. It's just one layer deep. But
Yeah.
we think it'll be a really cool way to encourage people to talk about and share this idea of, hey, let's learn about money together. And if you sign up, it's going to help me get a little bit more money to,
Yeah.
make it through 2020.
Yeah. It's so smart though, because like I've really in the last 5 years especially have gotten into affiliate marketing, which I didn't even know what that was. In fact, I kind of had like it kind of had a bad rap, especially in the South where I live.
Sure.
And it's just like commission. And so, but again, going back to morals and values, so now like at a coach, he's like, you are not talking about another freaking software or app because like that's my life, unless you have an affiliate code. And he's like, you have to start tracking how much business you're pouring into someone else's business. But he's like, the thing about you that you need to tell people is that everything you talk about, you personally use in your business and it's changed your life. And
Yeah.
so, like, there's my favorite story about affiliate marketing is someone sent me like this really cute, like a daytime planner, like at the beginning of a few years ago with like my initials. And, it was super cute. And I'm like, have you not looked at my website? I don't use fucking paper. Like, I don't like, I teach people and organizations like how to go paperless. And while
Yes.
this is cute and all, like, and there's some really great notable speakers out there that sell these things, and that's great. But like, no, I'm not going to do an affiliate. Like, I'm not going to use that. That's not authentic. And if my house burnt down or we had a flood, which I've been through both of those things, like it would be gone. And then I would be bonkers even worse.
Right.
So it's like being authentic when you're using something that's helping you personally or professionally. There's nothing wrong with it. And then, like, I'll tell people where I'm like, please use my code. And then if you like it and it makes a difference for you, then you go sign up to be an affiliate as well.
There
And
you
then it
go.
just keeps building. So I was part of the beta Dropbox when it came out. And so they
Oh,
don't give you
cool.
money, they give you free space. But
Yes.
essentially, it is money because I'll never pay for business Dropbox. I have terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of space forever, because I made photographers use it if we were collaborating on a project. So now, like, Dropbox is a huge part of teaching people to go paperless. So, but I didn't really understand it all until I was like, oh, that's what that means. And so now it's like every month it's nice to get those perks because, it saves me a couple $100s a year just by helping other people and telling other people about it.
Exactly. The helping other people is the key part, right? And one of the things I
Yeah.
thought was the biggest aha for people this year in 2020 when it relates to money And this is, again, what I love about MoneyVerbs is you can't have a sentence in the English language without a verb, right? And when money stopped moving, when there was no action, everybody was stuck at home. Look what happened to the economy. Right? When boom, it hit the fan because people weren't out there transacting. And that's the thing is, if I go buy stuff from the baker, he's going to go buy stuff from, the next shop, and on and on and on. And that money moves and it helps everybody. And so, I'm definitely trying to promote that as well.
So I'm downloading MoneyVerbs right now, you guys. Go get the app.
Yes.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, this has been very enlightening and definitely not a boring financial talk. And so I could, keep on going, but unfortunately we're out of time. So I'm like, if they have more questions and they want to continue the conversation, like what should they get the app and like learn things from there, or what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So, of course, check us out on social media. Personally, it's just Goodmanny, so Goodman with an I at the end, on all of our platforms. And then check out MoneyVerbs. It's really easy to find and search on all the social platforms. And, download the app. We love feedback. It's in its MVP stage right now, but we're adding more and more features every week. And if you're looking for personal financial planning, check us out at Becoming Financial.
I love it. Awesome. And we'll put all this in the show notes. And everyone who's listening, tell us what your top takeaway is. Tag us both. My little favorite platforms, Instagram and TikTok is growing. Are you on TikTok, by the way?
We're getting there. Yeah, we're getting there because our demographic is really intrigued by TikTok. And so it's like, all right, we got to get on there. My daughter is 5 and she's a little dancer, so she loves it.
I love it. There's actually, I think there's like 2 major like financial guys like in the industry that I follow, and they do some really good tips to like, the hottest music. It's just really fun.
Funny.
Like how they put like the music with the tips. It's like, very out of the box, but we pay attention to it as creatives. So yeah, y'all go follow on social media and go get MoneyVerbs, and I'll put it on the story and we'll put it in our show notes. And everybody, thanks for listening. I hope that you guys have a great week, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of Business Unveiled. Have a great day. Bye, everybody. That's it for this week's episode of Business Unveiled. Now that you have all the tools that you need to conquer the world and GSD, get shit done, would you share this with your friends and fellow business leaders? One thing that would really, really help us and help new listeners is for you to rate the show and leave a comment in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you tune in and listen to Business Unveiled. You can check out the show notes at angelaprofit.com/podcast and link up with us on social media so you can share your biggest insights. And I want to know your aha moments. Until next week, remember, the profitable shifts and structures you're creating in your business help you be more present in your life. So get out there and GSD.